Good thing humans don't operate that way, or this dinner might get complicated.
I agree to be yours, if you agree to be mine.
The restaurant had been my idea, which in retrospect was either the best decision I'd made in years or the setup for something I was completely unprepared for. Probably both. Her name was Sylvari, and she was the cultural exchange attaché assigned to the human diplomatic quarter of New Arath City, which was a very long title for what amounted to the job of sitting through an endless series of meetings, dinners, and ceremonies designed to make two civilizations feel comfortable with each other. She had been doing this for 4 months. She was, by every account I had heard and by my own observation over 6 weeks of working in the same building, extraordinarily good at it. She was also, and I want to be clear that I recognize this as a complicating factor, the most striking person I had ever seen in my life. My name is Declan Ward. I am 29 years old. I work in logistics coordination for the joint Human Aeliri Cultural Exchange Program, which means I arrange schedules and transportation and occasionally have to explain to very senior people why their very important meeting has been moved to a smaller room. It is not a glamorous job. It is, however, a job that had put me in the same building as Sylvari for 6 weeks, which I had come to regard as one of its better features. I had asked her to dinner at Aurelius, the restaurant on the 4th level of the exchange building, the one with the arched cream walls and the candles and the kind of menu that made you feel like you were in a different century, under the pretense of discussing the following week's scheduling conflicts. This was not entirely untrue. There were scheduling conflicts. I had simply decided that they were best discussed over good food and candlelight. She arrived exactly on time, which was a very Aeliri thing to do, and she was wearing the ivory and gold formal jacket that I had seen her in once before at a reception and had not been able to stop thinking about since. She sat across from me and folded her hands on the white tablecloth and looked at me with those warm brown eyes that always seemed to be processing several more layers of a situation than I was, and said, "You mentioned scheduling conflicts." "I did," I said. "There are very few scheduling conflicts that require candlelight." "I'm thorough," I said. Something moved at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile, but the territory adjacent to one. "You are unusual, Declan Ward," she said. "Most humans in professional settings maintain considerable distance from Aeliri colleagues. Most humans haven't spent 6 weeks watching you explain human bureaucracy to Ambassador Keth with a straight face," I said. "That kind of thing builds respect." The almost smile became an actual smile, and I decided immediately that this had been worth whatever professional awkwardness might follow. We ordered talk. The scheduling conflicts were mentioned briefly and resolved in approximately 4 minutes, after which we talked about everything else, about the differences between Aeliri and human humor, which were significant and fascinating, about the food, which she approached with a specific careful curiosity of someone who had decided to be genuinely open to new experiences, about the city beyond the restaurant windows, which she said looked like something between a dream and a diagram. It was during the second glass of wine, hers barely touched, mine more attended to, that I made the mistake. Or what I thought was a mistake. What turned out to be something else entirely. I had been teasing her gently about the Aeliri custom of formal pair bonding declarations, which she had explained earlier in the week during a cultural briefing, and which I had found both fascinating and faintly alarming in its directness. The Aeliri, apparently, did not do the prolonged ambiguous courtship that humans had elevated to something of an art form. When an Aeliri decided they wanted to be with someone, they said so. Clearly. Without the months of implication and interpretation and carefully managed uncertainty that human relationships seem to run on. "It sounds terrifying," I had said during the briefing. "It sounds efficient," she had replied. Now, across the candlelit table, I picked up that thread without thinking it all the way through. "So theoretically," I said with a kind of lightness that meant I was saying something I halfway meant but could retreat from if needed, If an Aeliri decided that a person was worth keeping around, they'd just say so. Right there. No preamble. Correct, she said. Just directly. I would like you to be mine. Or however it's phrased. The traditional phrasing, she said in a tone I couldn't quite read, is, I agree to be yours if you agree to be mine. Right, I said. Very efficient. Smiled. Good thing humans don't operate that way, or this dinner might get complicated. There was a pause. The kind of pause that has weight in it. Sylvari Owen set down her wine glass very carefully, with a particular deliberateness of someone making sure their hands were doing something steady while the rest of them did something significant. She looked at me across the table. Directly, the way Aeliri looked at things they had decided to be honest about, and her brown eyes were warm and clear and entirely serious. I agree to be yours, she said. If you agree to be mine. The restaurant continued around us. Glasses clinked at other tables. Someone laughed softly near the window. A candle between us sent a thin ribbon of warm light across the white tablecloth. I stared at her. That was, I said carefully, the traditional phrasing. Yes. You just. Yes. That wasn't, I was joking. I wasn't actually. I know you were joking, she said. And something in her expression softened without losing any of its certainty. I was not. I looked at her for a long moment. At the gold earrings and the dark braid and the ivory jacket and the eyes that had been seeing more layers of every situation than I had for 6 weeks. At the woman who had sat through 100 diplomatic ceremonies without anything touching her composure, and had just said the most direct and terrifying and extraordinary thing anyone had ever said to me across a dinner table. I'm going to need a moment, I said. Take the time you need, she said. I thought about it for approximately 4 seconds. I agree, I said. To be yours. The almost smile came back. Then the actual smile. Then something warmer and quieter than either, which I decided I was going to spend a considerable